Welcome back to the podcast. Jen here with my co-host Carrie. We're so excited about this topic today because I think it really is where the rubber hits the road in kind of what we do. It's talked about a lot, I think, in today's society as far as looking at healing things naturally, and that's addressing the root cause versus just managing symptoms. So today, we're going to just take a deeper dive into, are you getting or addressing to the root cause, or are you just managing symptoms? Because sometimes we think we are diving into the root cause. We think we're addressing root cause, but really is we're chasing, different supplements for symptoms, and not really looking at what's stressing the body. I always call them thorns. So those thorns or stressors are really what needs to be addressed, because the thorn has to be removed or you'll be dependent on those supplements or diets or etc. forever, as long as the thorn is still there. So Carrie, you want to just talk a little bit about, defining root cause versus symptom management?
Yeah. And I'm excited to dive into this topic because I feel like we hear the word root cause approach maybe, but we don't really understand what that is. And even in like the more holistic space, it seems like sometimes it's easy to fall into chasing symptoms, which is really just managing them versus getting to the root cause, especially if you're newer maybe to this space and you were in the conventional mindset even. And so sometimes that can bleed over into the holistic space. And it can really, it's kind of a mindset, I guess. And so at Cornerstone, we really do try our best to actually get to the absolute root cause of what's going on. So we wanted to talk a little bit more about that in this episode. So, defining root cause versus symptom management. Symptom management is truly just focused on reducing or controlling symptoms without necessarily addressing why they're happening. And a lot of times it's just like short term, and it could be through supplements. A lot of times, sometimes diet changes and things like that could play into this. But a lot of times it's just with supplements. And that's definitely a question that I've gotten before from like potential clients, like, what is your take on supplements? Because maybe they have worked with someone that is more into like symptom management versus root cause approach, and they're on a lot of supplements like long term. So that's
And
just what.
that's not to say, let me interrupt you. That's not to say that symptom management isn't important, because sometimes we need the symptom management to keep us comfortable as we're transitioning through this change, through the compensatory physiology as we get to the root cause. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to get to that, but I'm glad you went ahead and said that up front because yeah, I definitely agree. There's a time and a place for that, but it should be along with addressing the root cause, right? There should be a plan to address the root cause while also managing the symptoms along the way. Does that make sense? Does that sound like what you were saying, Jen?
Yeah, exactly. You have to do both concurrently, because sometimes people are so uncomfortable that it interferes with daily living. So we want to be really clear here. We're not, saying not to do any symptom, um, you know, management. What we're saying is, don't just do symptom management.
So that's a little bit about, a definition of symptom management, but then also root cause approach. What's more of a definition of that? This is where you keep asking why. Like, why are the symptoms there? Looking more upstream at things causing downstream effects, and exploring deeper imbalances like minerals, trauma, blood sugar imbalance, nervous system dysregulation is a huge one, metals, different types of infections or immune dysfunctions. Those are something we look at with every single client just to ensure, okay, is this actually what's going on here? Just kind of going down the list and almost checking boxes to make sure that no stone is left uncovered. And so, do you want to talk a little bit more about like examples? Maybe that would be good to illustrate.
Yeah, sure. So, the one that I feel like is so anecdotal right now is people read about magnesium being good for sleep. And so they'll just start taking magnesium when their sleep isn't, they're not getting a deep sleep or they don't feel refreshed when they get up in the morning. A lot of times people are deficient in sodium, potassium, chloride. They need the other minerals before they need magnesium. In fact, magnesium will sometimes make them feel worse if they start there. So that's one. The other thing is a probiotic. Everybody thinks, I feel like probiotic is like duct tape. Everybody thinks if they have a GI symptom, they need a probiotic. Which nowadays, with stress being high, as you age, your hydrochloric acid production, being lower, really, a lot of people had hydrochloric acid production issues. That's why everybody's on a PPI, a proton pump inhibitor, either over the counter or prescribed antacid. Uh, and that's, could lead to SIBO, or small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And taking a probiotic in that situation can be detrimental because you already have too much bacterial overgrowth. There's an imbalance in that microbiome, and sometimes the probiotic will actually make it worse than better. So those are the two that just pop into my head that I think we see pretty often. Are there other ones for you?
Yeah, those are two really good examples. And I think this is, it's great that there's so much more education out there on different ways to, to go more holistic rather than just taking like a prescription med for a lot of different things. However, there's a lot of blind supplementation, which can really sometimes make things worse. And also, it really is just symptom management. And so I think those are two really good examples. Hopefully that.
Yeah, zinc. I thought of another one, zinc. I remember during
Yeah.
COVID, everybody was on zinc. I can't tell you how much zinc toxicity I found. And because taking zinc when you don't need it will throw off your copper and your iron levels. And I saw that so often.
Yeah.
So that's just another huge one. I'm not saying again that you don't need these things. I'm just saying, you have to make sure your body needs it specifically.
Yeah. Another thing, just to keep in mind with getting to the root cause, is that oftentimes it will take more time and it takes more intention and sometimes patience because and while obviously if we have a new client and we are really wanting to help them kind of manage their symptoms right off the bat so that they feel better, so that their body has more energy to actually do the longer term, like more root cause healing. It's just a different approach rather than trying to come up with like a 3-month protocol and really get you feeling better in that amount of time versus really addressing the root cause. You have to peel it back in layers, and that looks different for every single person. And so sometimes it's just maybe a mental shift, because everybody's body heals differently and it heals in the route that it wants. And so that's why every single person, we have to really focus on them as a whole versus trying to put people in boxes or in specific protocols. I think that happens a good bit.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I think the biggest piece of root cause is there's multiple root cause. It's
Yes.
usually not just one. Can there be one that's contributing more than others? Absolutely. But it's usually and I'll use the example from our IHP certification. He always used the rain barrel, right? When the rain barrel keeps filling up and filling up and filling up and it gets to the top, you have to start unloading that rain barrel piece by piece. A lot of people use the analogy of peeling the onion, as Carrie said, peeling the layers. There's different layers, and each of them add to your symptoms, signs. And those are physical layers, there's emotional layers, and there's spiritual layers. And so if you're looking to do this type of work, true root cause, please expect to do this work for, I would say, the minimum 4 months, depending on what's going on, to a year to 2 years, depending on, if you've been chronically ill. I think that's a realistic time frame. I would say most people we work with is 6 to 9 months is more realistic, depending on how sick they are.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because I think 4 months is probably rare.
Yeah.
It's more so a longer time frame, and that doesn't mean that you won't feel better until 1 to 2 years later. That's not what we're saying. We're saying if you really want to get down to the root cause and peel back those layers, it is going to take more time. And because it's not, yes, supplements help, but a lot of this is lifestyle change related as well. And everybody looks a little bit different with where they're at with that. And so that's just a piece that I feel like is a little bit of a different approach rather than trying to fit people into like a 3 or 6 month time frame, a program. We've seen that that longer time frame work a little bit better.
Yeah. So, just some red flags about, if you're just managing symptoms. One is you're just chasing supplement protocols. So you're going from, one protocol to the next, um, and trying to fix the problem. First of all, you're not a problem to be fixed, right? You are coming to know Jesus better through this process. You are evolving and growing through this process. There's things you're learning through this process. And to dig deep into the physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of all three of those is so key. The other thing is consistently switching diets. Everybody always asks, well, should I try this diet? What about this diet? What do you think about this diet? Um, we are so biochemically different because our ancestors come, from all over the world, really here in the US. And so, we are a genetic gene pool of very different backgrounds. And so biochemically, we're all very different. Are there some basics to follow? Absolutely. Protein, fat, complex carbs every meal, keeping your blood sugar balanced. But as far as certain diets, do I recommend them if you're looking for weight loss when your BMI is, very high? Absolutely. I would say long term, though, if you're keep switching diets, that could be a problem. And then focusing, as we mentioned, just on those symptoms, trying to get rid of the symptoms, and instead of finding what's the thorn that's causing the symptoms, right? They could be emotional, they could be spiritual, they could be physical. They're usually all three. So really digging and looking for what. And I'm just thinking of this one patient who had MRI and CT. She had horrible, like, just dizziness and congestion. Her ears were ringing, plugged. She had pressure in her sinuses, and just CT after CT and MRIs, and they just really couldn't find anything. She actually had a tooth implant that they drilled for some decay. Tooth implants have titanium, and sure enough, we found titanium in her system, which again, that won't show up on any of the conventional stuff. So just keep digging. I want to reassure you that some of these thorns aren't well known in mainstream, right? Or they're maybe not addressed really. And so, but there is an answer. It just might not look how you thought it might look.
Yeah. And two, like I get, whenever you don't feel good, you're really focused on that one thing that you were like, if it was gone, my life would be so much better. But that's really where somebody else can come in and look at the full story of your entire life and your, all your symptoms, and more of like a big picture view. Whereas sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees because you just don't feel good, and and maybe you've read all these things and it's overwhelming to try and figure it out on your own. And so that's, we really love coming in and just giving people a different viewpoint, giving them direction, because root cause work is something that a lot of times you need guidance in, somebody that is just more trained to look at these different things and whatnot. So I just wanted to mention that. But another thing to note is that a lot of times the looking at the bigger story, we're looking for patterns. Patterns are really big when you think about root cause, and it's just sort of connect. They help you to connect the dots. We're actually going to talk about that a little bit more as it relates to looking at blood work in the next episode. So if that's interesting, you can tune into that one. And of course, for us at Cornerstone, this means partnering with the Lord, because yeah, when we're looking at clients, sometimes it's like, Lord, give us some insight. What are we missing here? What are we not seeing? What is right in front of us that we're just missing? Because yeah, the Holy Spirit, he leads and guides you and us, of course, if we're helping you with your root cause healing. But that's super key.
Yeah. So root cause looks at the deeper aspects, as we mentioned. So, whole body of the deeper questions, emotional, spiritual, physical, looking at patterns. So, we're looking at the physical patterns, we're looking at patterns in blood work and hair analysis, emotional and spiritual things. So, like trauma, your environment, your personal relationships, that sort of thing. There's always patterns in those that really give us good clues into why chronically you might be having something, or maybe even something that just came up.
Yeah.
Um, so, looking for those patterns is key. And then asking, okay, how does the body want to get rid of these patterns? Or how do we address these patterns? In what order? How does the body prioritize those? And really keeping the client comfortable while we're doing this. Because sometimes when you're healing, you can create shock to the system. And we call that a detox reaction or a Herxheimer reaction. And so while though we try to limit that as much as possible, it's a reality in this type of work because you just don't know sometimes how the body will react, and so it's managing and unburdening the body while managing the shock that the system may have undergone because of those trauma as well as due to the healing. So asking the deeper questions about each of those levels of the being, looking for the patterns, and then of course, asking God for insight into how do we lead this client where you were ultimately, to you, Lord, because you're the divine physician, to the healing that they need.
Yeah. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of a different, I should say, a better view of what the difference is between symptom management, root cause healing. Not that they can't overlap, but you really want to be looking at what is the actual root cause if you want true lasting healing. So if you have any questions about these things that we've mentioned, you can always email us or connect with us. There's lots of different ways you can do that. We have that in the show notes, in the description of this video. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful for you guys. We'll see you on the next episode.